Good friends, listen again to our legend of the Bionicle. In the time before time, in the glorious city of Metru Nui, we believed our noble Toa would protect us. But they fell one by one, as an unrelenting shadow sought to enforce endless sleep, so that he could create a time of dark order, then awaken the world as their conqueror.
I love the smell of Bionicle lore in the morning. What's up, gathered friends? Yeah, my last video was a bit of a trip, so why don't we just sit down and have ourselves a nice, calm lore discussion with no controversial topics. Like how some people don't like the Toa Metru. Yeah, you wouldn't believe it, but there are actually people in this world who don't like the prequel stuff in Bionicle. They're a minority, I'll grant you, but still, the fact that I was ever in danger of seeing these opinions at all is kind of offensive. In my humble opinion, Metru Nui is where the Bionicle universe really solidified. No longer were we bound to a single island's culture, but rather the entire world. This new island city had a central place in society as a whole, and going backwards to explore it near the end of its prime was a good idea. We had always heard vague tales of the past before, and this was our opportunity to live it. However, this also reveals why some might have a problem with it. You see, part of the appeal to the Motunui era of Bionicle was these mysteries that they laid out. Dots you could barely connect. The sense of a grander world being just beyond your grasp. And then they start revealing that mystery, and your simple little toy line is now an entire universe. You get overwhelmed with the current state of things, and can't keep up. But rather than accepting that, you blame the franchise for moving forward without you. It's happened time and time and time again, where a franchise makes a move that makes it better, but the people who either didn't stay caught up, or maybe just starting to grow out of it a bit saw a change, and they just couldn't keep up with it. And look, I'm not saying a franchise doesn't ever go astray, but 9 times out of 10, this type of attitude leads to franchises chasing nostalgia they don't truly understand, beyond a surface level at least. And if they ever make a Bionicle G3, I don't want them going in that direction. I'm sick of it. Reject nostalgia, embrace properly utilized continuity, and moving forward. I say on my channel where I talk about a ton of things from the past. But that's enough talk in that area. Trust me, we're going to have a lot of other videos to discuss that type of stuff. No, we have to discuss something much more important. The fact that you need to read these books! Bionicle Adventures 1 and 2 are downright the definitive versions of the events we're about to recap here today. More on that at the end. Bionicle Adventures 3, on the other hand, is just a bunch of boring filler that doesn't get interesting until about halfway through. And even then, I don't like the Toa Metru arguing like they were the Toa Nuva. The Toa Metru can argue, sure, but not in this way, and it felt very contrived when I was already sick of all this petty arguing. Move on! And move on we shall, as we begin the last few 2003 comics. Yeah, meant to do these in the last comics video, but cut at the last minute because I needed to rush. That's why I mentioned Menok 2 in that video, by the way. It was too late in the editing to cut that reference. Issue 13 starts us up with a story that's kinda filler, honestly. It takes place during the Mask of Light movie, where we see Tahu, Gali, and Liwa battling Panrak, Gurak, and Lirak, while Taraka Wanua reveals that the Roxy's Karada were actually used to infect the masks of the Rahi back in 2001. Apparently, the Turaga have been gathering them up for years, and containing them in these capsules that keep them in suspended animation. If you read those books like I told you to, this is looking pretty familiar. And it's a safe bet that Wanua himself had a pretty big hand in this. Also, Tahu is looking pretty dang sexy in this panel. Issue 14 is more of that, with Kopaka fighting all 6 Roxy, and having a panel where he's just a talking head. Twice. Then the other Toas show up and start arguing, because that's just kind of Toa Nuva's thing right now. I mean, yeah, there's a story reason for it, but I was tired of it once the 2001 stuff wrapped up. These guys can work together just fine. Stop breaking character for the sake of bad drama. Anyway, they get over that and Tahu has a brief talking head moment. Because we all know that's a good formula. We do have a bit of a continuity error here, where Whenua and Bohatu are found before the Kininui fight. But I think that was more done to prevent spoilers than anything else. They also don't show Jaw and Takua in these issues despite them having set forms. Weird. So anyway, Kininui, Takanuva arrives, you seen the old Nui? Watch the dang movie, and we're caught up. Issue 15 starts us up with the residents of Motunui saying goodbye to it, including Vakama, Jaw, and Takanuva looking at what is left of Takoro, where the Turaga recounts a tale of Tahu, Liwa, and Kopaka fighting 2 Rakshi Kaida before the 3 head out to the beach, where he reveals to the 7 Toa that the Turaga had planned to start telling them about Mechanui and stuff after the Koli tournament, but the Mask of Light stuff kinda got in the way of that. But here it is, the moment of truth. Our first big revelation, the Nuva are not the first Toa. And while I'm sure that people already knew about the Metru before this issue came out, can you imagine reading this back in the day without that knowledge? Not only do we have this mysterious new island that the Matoran supposedly came from, completely contradicting what we knew before, but we also have this revelation. The world of Bionicle is bigger than anyone ever expected, and we're about to learn about it. Oh, to have been old enough for forums back then. Anyway, our first proper issue brings us up to speed on stuff we'll cover a bit more in the Legends of Mechanui review, so I'll just tell you the names of the Toa since I didn't properly introduce the Turaga in the first episode. One of many reasons I plan to eventually remake that episode, by the way. Our protagonists are Vakama, Toa of Fire, Nokama, Toa of Water, Anawa, Toa of Stone, Matau, Toa of Air, Nuju, Toa of Ice, and Whenua, Toa of Earth. Don't pay any mind to some of their eye colors being wrong, by the way. Metro Media in general is pretty bad about being toy inaccurate. Also, you may have noticed the exposed gearboxes in the comic art. This seems to be a leftover from prototypes you could see in a lot of LEGO advertisements back in the day. And no, they never fix it. In fact, some other media, like the Maze of Shadows video game, actually used this look. Though at least their eye colors were right. Naturally, the Six are kind of wondering why they just got zapped into Toa, but that gets interrupted by Vakama having a vision of Mechanui in ruins, but being restored by 6 great Kanoka discs. Lore talk. Kanoka discs are throwing discs made of purified liquid protodermis, and contain various powers, much like the Kanohi mask some are made into. Each one contains 3 digits, representing the origin, power, and potency of the disc. Power levels tend to range from 1 to 8, with only the 6 great discs possessing a power level of 9. There are various other details I could go into, but just know that the Kanoka discs are big things in Mechanui, to the point where Vakama uses a disc launcher as his main Toa tool. Also, did you know that the name of my main show and Bionicle's official fan club from 2004 onwards basically translates to Disc Club? Anyway, the other Toa think he's nuts, but with the vines of a plant I'll just call Moby tearing through the city, it might be a good idea to start gathering them anyway. His vision also came up with the names of 6 Matoran who know where to find the discs. Dahati, Airi, Visola, Nuri, Akamu, and Orkum. I hope I pronounced those right, because I do not feel like re-recording that. And naturally, all 6 are in some form of danger when the Toa find them, all having been lured into some sort of trap. Oh yeah, and they do this confusing thing in the comic where all the Matoran look exactly the same, even though a simple mask change wouldn't have been that hard. But oh well. Later, the Toa gather at the Great Temple, and Vakama, despite his dialogue being given to Nokama here, suspects that one of the Matoran is a traitor. Our second issue brings us to the quest for the Tametru disc, the Toa and Matoran having split into teams of 4. Next time one of you 2 tries to take off, I'm going to let the Vaki have you. Right. And how would you find the great discs then? You need us, Anawa. Okay, when a Moby Vine starts dragging you off, be sure to tell it how much you're needed. It could probably use a good laugh. Vakama and Nuri travel into the Tametru fire pits, where they find the disc, along with some Moby Vines, which they barely manage to escape. While Nuju and Whenua battle a creature in the archives, Nokama and Matao prepare to capture the Lee Metru disc, which is caught in something called a force spear in one of Lee Metru's chutes. Once the spear gets enough energy, it'll implode and destroy anything inside of it. So Matao has to do this while the thing is moving, and try to not get caught in the force sphere himself. He does so, and soon all 6 great discs are retrieved. The Toa surmise, through Visola's research, that there is a king root to destroy the Mobi. Destroy that, you destroy the whole plant. And since it seems to love heat, where better for it to be than the Great Furnace in Ta Metru? And so, the group decides that's their next target. What's the matter, Visola? There is nothing to fear. You are with 6 Toa Metru. You will be safe. No, I won't be. None of us will be. Don't you know what they say about the Mobi? When it knows you're looking for it, it comes looking for you. Our third and final issue has our group on the way to fight the Mobi, while Akamu tries to flee multiple times. Sambaki, robotic law enforcement basically, start chasing them, but they quickly manage to hide in an abandoned forge. Or at least it seems abandoned, until seeds start falling from the ceiling and wrap the Toa in quick-growing vines. Thanks to Nuju's forward thinking, however, he manages to escape, and frees the others before he and Anna will bring the house down on the seeds. The revelation that the out-of-control plant is now reproducing is not good though, so they need to get going before— Dang it, Akamu! Yeah, he was the traitor this whole time, and he wasn't even good at hiding it. Still though, it seems like the threat of becoming compost will keep him in check for now, so the group proceeds to the Great Furnace. And just ignore the lack of Matoran here, they formed a Matoran Nui in the room beforehand. Even the dang comic is telling you just read the book. Anyway, that is a massive weed. And it's talking.
My arms extend to every part of this city. I am in the furnaces, the chutes, the canals. The Matoran live and work only because I choose to let them. But if they anger me, I will drive the Matoran into the heart of the city, as I was commanded. Then I will command Metru as my own. Those who survive will serve me, or perish. Beginning with you!
Hey! Look at Wanua's face here. He looks so sad, it's just precious. So yeah, Nokama and Nuju combine their powers to help get Wanua's great disc back. But the vines are so widespread that it's like fighting hundreds of enemies at once. So, Vakama just tells everyone to stop fighting. The Mobi is confused by this, of course, and grabs them all in vines to find out why. Which brings them in close enough to throw the great discs at it, which forms a giant energy spear around the king root, cutting it off from the heat of the furnace. And in turn, it also brings the great furnace down as the Toa escape. The Mobi dies, and without the king root to feed them, all the rest of the vines around the city start to die as well. And while the plant problem is settled, the Toa are left to wonder, who was the one who commanded it to drive the Matoran into the heart of the city? And who even could command a monster like that? Questions we will answer another day. For now, though, these comics are perfectly fine. But the books are better. Even reading them without the added context of the books, these things felt very bare bones in terms of content. Like, I skimmed a lot in this episode to save on production time, since we do have an entire movie ahead of us for character stuff, but you didn't really miss that much. By comparison, the 2002 and 2003 comics were a lot more meaty in terms of story. Even if you hadn't read the books, you could just as easily get a full story out of those comics. But here, you basically need those books to make sense out of some things, to the point where it eventually just tells you to read the books. It feels more like the 2001 comics, where it was more of a promotional tool than an actual storytelling opportunity. I understand that they were very hamstrung by the movie coming up, which needed to be more self-contained and stuff, but it feels like the comics could have done way better in that regard. And yes, for those wondering, I did read the Lunchables comics just in case, but those will get their own spotlight video once the main series is done. And that's where our legend ends for now, gathered friends. Join us next time for a movie night.
There is an island city called Metru Nui. Surrounded by mystery, threatened by darkness.
We shall not fail.
Where the torch of leadership will be passed to a new generation of heroes.
The city needs your help.
The destiny of Metro Nui rests in your hands.
Each holds a piece of the puzzle that can unlock the secrets of unlimited power.
The Great Spirit shall guide you in ways you could not imagine.
But as the forces of evil battle to tear them apart,
Look out!
their only hope is to stand together.
We use the mass powers that Great Spirit gave us! Follow me!
Every legend has a beginning. Bionicle 2, Legends of Metro Nui.